Anyone who knows me can tell you that I am a man that loves garbage. I thrive in environments of low quality and thought media. I love consuming high trope slop and finding value in its trashiness. Consequently, I'm a big anime fan, but as time has gone on, I've kind of transitioned to consuming mostly anime-adjacent media, where there's even fewer barriers to the sweet, hot garbage and mud. I'm like a feeding addict for this stuff, which has made me slowly escalate my slop consumption into harder, more trashy realms. This has led me to my most recent obsession, which is really long Chinese web novels about cultivation. Now, you may not be familiar with what I mean when I say cultivation, but a basic idea of it is it's like Taoism, but way more high magic. Think mostly like ancient China kung fu movies and flying swords. There's a video by Cool History Bros called History of Wushu and Xianxia Cultivation Trope Explained with Brandon Sanderson's magic system that tries to explain it using Brandon Sanderson's ideas on magic in fantasy stories. You could take a look at that if you want a more detailed idea of what it is. In my consumption of this fantasy subgenre, I have noticed that these stories are clearly very inspired by RPGs and games. You will constantly see complex level systems implemented in these stories that make a smooth video game-like progression system that's like baked into the setting. There's huge aspects of looting animals for drops and using those things like crafting materials. Almost every story gives the characters infinite bags of holding they can use like an inventory. These worlds are filled with special inheritances that are basically just dungeons, even down to having final bosses you need to beat to receive the big reward that was left behind. The nerd gamer culture is seeping out of the bones of these authors like a curse on their blood. They can't help but let it infect the words they write. Just look at this cultivation chart from A Will Eternal. If you tell me this guy isn't a gamer, I'll tell the authorities to shoot you, because you're clearly a terrorist. So this leads me to think, okay, if it's so clearly adjacent media to games, surely the genre must be thriving in the gaming space. And yet, quite woefully, I'm presented very few options to satisfy my newfound thirst for this novel taste of trash in my favorite format of interactive media, gaming. Why is this so? Why must I be so denied by this cruel world? Am I being punished for a karmic debt accrued by my ancestors? Well, in truth, I'm not completely devoid of options. There are a few games out there to satisfy my cravings that fall firmly into this subgenre and are lots of very stupid fun. For one, I present Amazing Cultivation Simulator, which is RimWorld, except fucking crazy. This game does a great job of providing most of what you would see out of this genre and being sufficiently complex and strange to really nail the feeling. But, unfortunately, it is, at the end of the day, a base-building settlement management game, which is great if that's what you want, but I feel it's missing a sense of personal power fantasy and development that the genre is kind of known for. There's also Tales of Immortal. I would call this like an ascendant phone game. It's got a big, complex world and lots of mechanics to engage with, but the combat is not the most engaging or interesting, so it hits with the power fantasy real good, but it's still not quite what I'm looking for. The same applies to my last example, The Matchless Kung Fu, another interesting game that I thought was cool, but I didn't really like the combat of. The readership for this stuff is huge, so I figured I'd have more options to work with. So in writing this, I came with a goal of finding out why I don't have more options, despite readership being an estimated 575 million domestic readers in China and 352 million overseas readers. And I found out why. It's really simple, actually. It's me. It's my fault. Actually, there's a ton of options, and I'm a big idiot dumbass who just hasn't tried to play them. Most glaringly at the moment is Black Myth Wukong, which isn't quite the thing I'm looking for, more just Chinese fantasy, but it's certainly close enough to consider. But more importantly, in researching for this, I discovered there's actually a ton of cultivation action games out there that have just flown completely under my radar. that I really gotta play, including, but not limited to, Sword and Fairy 7, Huajon 3, Bloody Spell, Soul of Blades. This game especially looks fucking sick. Look at that trailer. Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Literally all of the Dynasty Warriors games. How did I not think of that? The Wind Road. And a ton of other games. Being honest, I expected to be going into this and trying to figure out what about the Chinese market is hindering the proliferation of this subgenre into the larger world of games, despite its success in other media formats. And my results in looking into that is that it basically isn't affecting it at all. At least the Chinese government's policy isn't affecting it. But there is one looming specter over these games that I would attribute to stifling the proliferation of this subgenre into mainstream gamer minds. You see, while these games have certainly been made, you can see a kind of lack of that big title mainstream flair in a lot of these games. Clearly this isn't where the money is going in Chinese game development. No, instead, the Chinese developers are putting the money where it really belongs. The phones. The Chinese market makes way more mobile games than the US games industry. It's a huge focus for developers in China. It's where all the money for the Chinese games industry is. If it's out on a phone and it doesn't have microtransactions, it's just not making the kind of money it would be if it was. And making a large scope, genre-faithful, single-player, xianxia, open-world action RPG is just not good for phones or microtransactions. So, while I was certainly a fool to believe there wasn't a bunch of dope shit that rips available to satisfy my needs, my feelings aren't 100% unfounded. There really isn't an ideal game for me out there that has all the parts together merged into one huge mega game. The market just isn't set up for that. And not just the Chinese market. The gaming market in general is losing space for these kinds of games, and we may soon hit the market cap for how many developers could be making a big single-player experience as costs balloon and more games come out. Western developers are already making most of the AAA releases. Chinese developers don't have a lot of incentive to pivot from the well-captured domestic market for mobile gaming to try and eat up some of the pie for AAA single-player experiences. But markets be damned, passionate people will always make games, and while I might not have my ideal game for the genre, I do have every piece of it in lots of smaller games I should have already been looking at. If you take anything away from this video, let it be this. Play some different games. Broaden your horizons a bit, and don't let yourself be deprived of good experiences because you didn't look. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, please give us a subscribe and try and check out some more stuff from the SGK channel. Hopefully you'll find something you like.